Hello and welcome to today's Partner Web Conference. This is Fast Track Dynamics 365 for Finance and Operations Enterprise Edition Tech Talk. Today's topic, Environment Planning. Presenting for us today from Microsoft, we have Senior R&D Solution Architect, Christopher Lim. So without any further delay, Christopher, over to you.
Thanks, Janice. All right. Hi, everyone. So I'm Christopher Lim. I'm a Senior Solution Architect in R&D, so in the Fast Track for Dynamics 365 Finance and Operations team, EMEA. With me is Davey, who is going to process the different questions that you may have during the session on the environment planning topic. So as Janice said, feel free to just ask your questions. We can definitely answer those during the meeting and this presentation. So about this tech talk, the objectives for us are really for you to be more keen on the concepts around the Dynamics 365 Finance and Operations environments. We've seen in the field that some customers and some partners were skipping this important activity, the environment planning, and in the end faced different kinds of issues. So we're going to use this experience from actual implementations to provide you guidance and help you build a proper environment plan that will be adapted to your implementation. Within this hour, we will not have time to go in more detail on the licensing aspects or on all the environments management, service requests, and SLA. So in a nutshell, environment planning, it's this set of activities where you're going to identify the environments you need during and after the implementation. In the end, the environments plan is usually a simple table, a matrix, where you have the environments that you need along with different details, such as the type, the tier, the topology, the deployment option, when you would need it, and this kind of information. It's really a living document that you should revisit at each key project milestone because your needs may change as you're progressing in the project. It's very important that you take the time to do that early in the project to basically avoid last-minute missing environments. One key thing that we will discuss about is this impact on your project and go-live date. Purchasing an environment, it's not a trivial activity. It can have some lead time. So if you plan early what environments you need, you can take all the preparation steps to get them on time. Also, by doing the environments planning, you will be able to identify early the extra environments you need and the costs that are related to those. So there won't be any surprise, and you will be able to budget that properly. Ultimately, the end goal is to enable your project team members to work and deliver their tasks on the environments they need. So the agenda. We'll start with the glossary because there are different terms that are used when we're talking about the Dynamics 365 Finance and Operations environments. We'll clarify that, but in the end, I will cover all the terms basically throughout the tech talk. Then we'll jump to the standard offer. So what are the environments you get when you purchase the minimum 20 licenses? We'll talk about additional environments that you may need during your project. We'll go through a sample exercise so that you understand the steps to build your environments plan and other considerations and recommendations that we have captured from experiences in the field. And finally, we will come to the checklist and the resources that are related to this topic. So let's start with the glossary. One prerequisite, and I strongly advise you to read this article that we've put, is about the relation between the Azure Active Directory tenant and the different types of subscriptions you may have attached to it. This is really the starting point, and we've seen some confusion around what is an Azure subscription, what is a Dynamics 365 Finance and Operations subscription. So this article is very good to clarify those concepts. In short, your organization will have an Azure Active Directory tenant to hold organizational users and also the different subscriptions that would be tied to those users. I'm taking this example for the company Contoso that would have the tenant contoso.onmicrosoft.com. In this example, they have organizational users and they have purchased 3 types of subscriptions: Office 365 subscriptions, Azure subscriptions, and Dynamics 365 Finance and Operations subscriptions. So licenses for the users, but also add-on environments. In the end, the key thing is that when you have an Azure Active Directory tenant, it will hold your users and your subscriptions. Other terms. An environment is basically a workspace where your project team members or your end users are going to perform their activities. For a developer, it could simply be developing. For a tester, it could be system testing, integration testing, user acceptance testing. For the end users, that would be running the operations, basically. So an environment has a purpose, and it's always important to keep that in mind. And also, we're going to talk about the tiers, and I will go in more detail in a specific slide. But the tier represents just a category of the environment, and it's applicable to the standard add-on environments. We'll see that in a minute. We'll talk about the environment topology, which is basically the composition of the environment. We have, for example, with tier 1 environments, the develop or build and test topologies. We'll talk about deployment options. And this is precisely for the tier 1 environments, and it defines who is going to manage it and where it will be hosted. The options are standard or add-on, cloud hosted, or VHD. I will talk about that in more detail. I'm jumping this slide because I think it will be clear as I'm taking the other examples in the other slides. So let's now cover the standard offer, what you get when you have purchased 20 licenses for finance and operations. So in the standard offer, we're providing you one environment to operate your business, that is production. It is disaster recovery enabled and highly available. And we're providing 2 environments to build your solution. A tier 1 environment, which can have a topology develop or build and test. And a tier 2 environment, where you would do your testing, your UAT as well. Standard acceptance testing. Also, as part of the offer, you're getting SQL and file storage. As you get more licenses, you get additional storage. We've provided the link to the licensing guide. Do make sure to always refer to that to have the latest view on the licensing policy. The 3 environments we just mentioned, they can be deployed at specific moments in your implementation. For the tier 1 environment, it's basically on demand. So as soon as you have configured Visual Studio Team services, you're able to deploy it in a self-service manner. The tier 2 environment, the standard acceptance test, we usually have this environment deployed during the onboarding meeting you have with the Fast Track team so that you understand what are the different steps to do the deployment, and you can then replicate that for the next environments you may need. Ultimately, it's also a self-service task. Production, this is more specific, and we're going to cover that in the next slides. A quick word about the Tier 1 and the Tier 2 or higher environments. One thing we want you to understand is that the Tier 1 environment has a different architecture than the Tier 2 and the higher environments. Tier 1 environments are unibox. It means that all the different components that make our solution, the OS, the database, retail, management reporter, and the other services, all of them are installed on the same machine, on the same server. The other thing is that we're using SQL Server on the Tier 1 environments, and this specific architecture is very different from production. It's made to maximize the efficiency for the developers. So when we see customers and partners doing tests, meaning UAT or performance testing on Tier 1 environments, this is a no-go, because it's very likely that the performance will be higher in this environment and will not be relevant because they will be very different from what you would get in production. So don't do UAT or performance testing on the Tier 1 environments. The other thing to note about those Tier 1 environments is that they can be deployed in different ways. It's what I was mentioning about the standard add-on, the VHD, or the cloud-hosted deployment options. So we'll cover that in a bit. Tier 2 and higher environments, they are more like production, meaning that the components, the different building blocks that make our solution, will be installed in multiple servers. Also, they're going to use Azure SQL, just like production. So the architecture will remain the same, despite a different sizing. The Tier 2, Tier 3, Tier 4, and Tier 5 environments, they can only be purchased as add-on environments, and you cannot just host them under your own Azure subscription. Those are the environments where you would do UAT or performance testing. Let's talk about production. We've seen customers and partners trying to use production as a non-production environment. That is not possible. Production is an environment to operate and not to build. In terms of timing, it's going to be released at the end of UAT, when we know that your solution is bound to be final. The code will be final, signed off. Same thing for the customization. Same thing for any additional pieces in your solution, like an ISV solution. This happens usually a month before go live. And as you get production, you can then do a mock cutover, basically. So a month before go live, you would come to the end of UAT. We would have this readiness assessment where different checks are made. For example, the usage profile is up to date and activated. As I mentioned, the code and configuration are ready, and the solution is signed off. There are other types, but this gives you a good idea. Once the readiness is assessed, the next step is basically to have production sized to run your business post go live. The sizing is based on the usage profile and the performance testing telemetry data. The combination of the two will allow Microsoft to size the environment so that it can handle the workload of your business whenever it's reaching the peak. I just mentioned the mock cutover. So this is a feature that we encourage you to use. We have in LCS the point-in-time restore for non-production environments, the tier 2 and higher. It's also possible before go live to use it for production. So the idea would be that you have done UAT, you have received your production environment after the readiness assessment and the sizing. Now you can initialize production, do the data migration, do your final round of validation, also checking the speed, so maximum volumes. And you can use a service request in LCS addressed to the dynamic service engineers to restore production to a clean snapshot. And those snapshots, they are taken every 15 minutes and they go up to 35 days. So this is a very powerful feature that helps you to consolidate your mock cutover, your cutover plan, by doing a mock cutover. One remark is that you can do a final round of validation, but you should not do the exhaustive performance testing or UAT in production. That would happen really too late. Another remark regarding production is that most of the team are considering latency when they're selecting the right data center for production. Some teams are not doing that. And in those cases, we can see some performance issues already at the network level. There are tools outside that you can use to test and determine what's the best data center in terms of latency. So do leverage, for example, PSPing if you have an up and running environment to test the latency, or sites like AzureSpeed.com. In this example, for example, we have 3 data centers selected, and AzureSpeed.com will tell us which one is the closest in terms of latency. So in my case, I'm based in Paris. So of course, the one closest to me is in the Netherlands, West Europe. So free environments are not always sufficient. I would say it's primarily for the small projects. What happens if you want more? If you need additional environments to do, for example, the tracking of your configuration, specific work on the data migration, on performance testing, on training, and so on. So keep in mind that each and every project has different activities. There is a common baseline, and that's why we can provide this sample table. But ultimately, the partner has to make sure that all the different activities specific to the implementations are understood, listed, and that you have the final list of environments. In standard projects, what we see most of the time is that they will use the standard environments, the tier 1 to build, the tier 2 to do the UAT, production to operate, and they will just add an extra one to take any X++ hotfix. When it becomes slightly more complex, usually the customer and the partner wants to track configuration in one specific environment to quickly initialize other environments. So this is where we see golden configuration appearing. Same thing as a matter of efficiency. In those medium complexity projects and also higher, we see that data migration is taking a larger part because there are many different legacy systems. So in order to avoid conflicting activities, you're doing UAT and at the same time there is some data migration corrupting the data in the environment and making the results of your tests incorrect. In order to avoid those situations, a dedicated environment for data migration is allocated. Then in larger implementations, we see most of the time that specific environments will be allocated for performance testing. They will be more powerful. Training, and also the other types of testing. There could also be any other activity that would be requiring that would require an environment. We've seen cases, for example, where the customer wanted one environment for exploration for the consultants and the partner in general, and one environment to explore for the customer. Same thing, they wanted to have an environment on the next version to assess the new features and see if it would be a good fit for them or not. So it really depends on the scope, the implementation, and the activities. So do make sure that you have this exercise of brainstorming about what will be the key activities in your project that will require an environment. We talked a lot about environments managed by Microsoft versus managed by the customer and the partner. The environments that are managed by Microsoft can be a tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, tier 4, tier 5. Ultimately, what it means is that Microsoft is maintaining the environment. A good example is on the OS and on the security maintenance, where Microsoft will plan and execute the patching. The environments that are managed by the customer and the partner, they apply only to the tier 1 environments. And it's basically when you're going to download the VHD and run it on premises in your own data center or on your laptop, or when you're going to use your own Azure subscription. In this case, it will be the cloud-hosted environments. What it means is that you are responsible for maintaining the environment. So, a good and common question is, when it comes to additional tier 1 environments, what are my deployment options and what are the differences? So, the first aspect is cloud versus VHD. As you can see, whether it's cloud-hosted or standard add-on, there's a strong integration between the environment, deployment, and the tooling in LCS. You can see it with VSTS, for example. So whenever you will use the VHD, keep in mind that you may leverage your hardware, but you're going to have manual activities to maintain this environment and to use it actually. The other aspect now is between the standard add-on, so when it's managed by Microsoft, and the cloud-hosted option, when you're deploying the environment under your own Azure subscription. In terms of functionalities, one driving factor is the limitations that have come with what we call the admin lockdown. So it's the fact that you're no longer able to be administrator on the tier 1 environments managed by Microsoft on the add-on tier 1. We'll discuss a bit more about it, and we have also put a link to the blog posts and to the FAQ. This would be the first consideration when you're selecting the tier 1 deployment option. The other is the cost model. So when you're using an add-on tier 1 environment, it's a fixed flat rate. It's the same price whether I turn on the machine 2 hours or 24. For cloud hosted, it's pay as you go. If it's turned on just 8 hours, you pay 8 hours. As of now, the key rule for selecting the deployment option for the tier 1 environments is related to the admin lockdown. For example, if you need to install a third-party tool to do your activities on the environment, then the add-on will not be the right option. If administrator permissions are required, you should use the cloud-hosted environments. It's the same thing, for example, when you want to develop Power BI reports, or when you're going to do retail development, and you may need, for example, Fiddler or such tools, go with cloud-hosted. As I just mentioned, there is in our community blogs an FAQ covering the different questions about the admin lockdown. Feel free to go there, check the questions, and submit new ones if it's still not clear. This is effective from Peer 12 and higher, so most of the new projects are already under the admin lockdown. What is upcoming is the next step of the admin lockdown for the Tier 2 and higher environments. In this case, it will mean that the remote connection through RDP, it will not be possible anymore. The vision is really to replace the local user actions by tasks available in LCS that would be self-service. The examples here are basically performance issues when you're trying to investigate, or the backpack procedure to restore database from SQL Server to Azure SQL, so from a Tier 1 to a Tier 2 or higher. As soon as we'll get more details on the lockdown for the Tier 2 and higher, we'll put that in the LCS blog, and also in the upcoming articles we'll have on environment planning. Another common request is, how do I select the right Tier 2, Tier 3, Tier 4, Tier 5 environment based on the needs in my implementation? In general, it's just like for the number of environments you would need. Each and every project is different because the business operations are very different. We're providing this baseline guidance, but do make sure to work with the partner to adjust the baseline and to consider the business-specific scenarios. It could be really the type of users you may have. It could be the complexity of the different scenarios. It could be the volumes. The key point is that your partner will have the expertise to adjust this baseline guidance. So the two factors to consider are the number of users and the number of transaction lines processed per hour. The thresholds here will help you to select what is the right environment to do your testing, performance testing. When we talk about the transaction lines per hour, keep in mind that in the subscription estimator module in LCS, when you're uploading the usage profile, LCS will provide you this measure, the transaction lines per hour. So do use that to basically see where it falls. So now we're going to cover a sample exercise, and you can leave for 5 minutes if you want to try it out. There's different ways to build your environments plan, and many are working fine. Here's an approach that we've seen in the field and that is working quite well. The goal, again, is to determine what are the environments we need during and after the implementation. The steps are really simple. First, you're going to identify the different project activities that require an environment. You're going to assess the life cycle of those activities, and this will tell you how long an environment will live. you would consider that before and after go live. Then, as a first step, you're going to determine what is the right type, what is the right topology for the environment, and you will come with a summarized list of the environments with additional details. We're going to show you a spreadsheet. Keep in mind that it will be available in the upcoming docs article. We're also going to put that on Infopedia with the deck also. So here is the situation. Contoso, again, is implementing finance and operations again, and they give you some elements to help you construct the environments plan. They want training sessions to happen in analysis and deployment. They have 3 developers from the partner and 1 additional developer from the ISV. They want to track the configuration in a separate environment. They will handle data migration on their own throughout the project from analysis to support. And they want performance testing to happen parallel to UAT in a good environment. So what do you do? Step 1. So those are the phases for our project. At this stage, we're initiating with the project manager and the architects. We're going to brainstorm about the activities. And we're going to focus and track the ones that may need an environment. Workshops delivery, initial training sessions, configuration tracking, build activities, data migration activities, development, testing, different types of testing, UAT, performance testing, additional training sessions for the end users, our mock cutover, the operations, and support. We don't focus at all on the environment type, the topology at this stage. Now we have determined the different activities. We can start thinking about, okay, what is the right tier? And if it's a tier 1, what would be the right topology for it? And deployment option. So we know, for example, that each developer must have his own environment. The customer is okay with going with cloud hosted because they will need to install third-party tools that will need the administrator role. For data migration activities, they want to use a VHD and host that in their on-premises data center. When it comes to testing, we know we cannot use a tier 1, so it will have to be at least a tier 2. And performance testing, after an assessment, we can see that a tier 4 may be the most adapted tier. Training sessions could happen on the tier 2. Operations, it will be in production. And we know that we can do the mock cutover in production. So think about that as well. Now we're trying to see if we can optimize our activities to run them on the same environment. For example, it's not possible with developments because we know each developer must have his own environment. But for testing, when we do integration testing or process testing, it could happen on the same environment that I would call CLI test. Same thing with UAT and the training. I could do my UAT in CLI UAT, and then after that, do my training sessions on the same environment. So I'm trying to optimize the environments list to come with the minimal number. Same thing, post go live, I'm thinking, okay, so some environments, will I need them? Yes or no? You can think, for example, about the configuration tracking that will not be necessary post go live. And the CLI test, we could keep it to the support of production. Ultimately, I come with a simple table that is recapping what are the environments I need, their purpose, the deployment option, the topology, the owner, who would be responsible for maintaining the status and also managing it if applicable, the licensing type, and the due date, so that you can prepare and be as efficient as possible. The last point would be to know what would happen to this environment post-go live. This is a simple exercise. Feel free to use it and adjust it to your own methodology, to the complexity of your environments, to track more details. It will be again on Infopedia and on our upcoming docs article. Now, other considerations and recommendations that we've captured. I will not cover specifically how you're purchasing the environments, the add-on environments. One key remark is that there is lead time. So the sooner you have identified the environment you need and starting the process to get it, the better it is. We've seen different cases where, for example, they wanted to do performance testing after detecting performance issues, and they had to wait for a few weeks for the licensing reseller to place the order, to get a budget and so on. So the lead time forced them to wait to do their investigation on the performance issues. And this can be severe problems. One other remark is that some customers are not aware they can subscribe to the add-on environments on a monthly basis. If you have purchased your initial licenses through the enterprise agreement, for example, you could use the MPSA to get a tier 5 environment just for a few months. And it actually makes sense. So keep in mind that you can use the MPSA or the CSP to subscribe to environments on a monthly basis. And to be extra clear, with enterprise agreement it would be MPSA, and for CSP it would be already on a monthly basis. So, some recommendations so that you can avoid issues that we've seen in the field. First of all, and I keep repeating myself, discuss and strategize the environments planning early in the project, and then revisit the environments plan at each key milestone. Second thing, deploy the environments using a named account, like dinadmin@customer.com. The situation is that when you're doing database refreshes, this administrator account, the one that deployed the environment, is going to be the only one active. So if it's a named account and that person has left the company, you would be in trouble. So do make sure to create this dinadmin@customer.com account and deploy the environments with this one. It's just a bootstrapping mechanism. Also, the build and test environment is very powerful, so deploy and leverage it. It will help you to generate automatically your builds. It will also initialize VSTS. So for example, in the source repository, the branch and the structure of it. So it's very powerful. If you were managing your builds, and actually we have a tech talk on ALM in general, you could plan that every night a build is generated so that the next morning you can see what is the status. Did it compile? Did my automated tests run successfully? And if not, you can quickly investigate. And this happens potentially on a daily basis, so you're maintaining the highest level of quality for your solution. Most of it is automated, so it's really, really simple in a few clicks. Get informed about the restricted access, so the admin lockdown, with the links we've provided, so that you think about the restrictions and the impact on you. For example, if you're going to install third-party tools that need the administrator access. Do allocate one environment per developer. It's not like with 2012 when it was possible to mutualize the development environment. Assign the owner who will be responsible of the status of the environment and maintaining it if it's applicable. And the final thing is when you're considering doing additional releases post go live, consider having a second tier 2 or higher environment. The situation is you're working on your next release and you're doing UAT in a tier 2 environment. There is an issue in production that requires you to do a database refresh to investigate. The database refresh is going to corrupt basically your UAT, and you will have to stop that. By having two environments, two tier 2 environments, you will be able to, on one hand, continue working on your release, on the other, support production. Finally, don't plan on using production as a non-production environment. It is not meant for that. Again, it's an environment to operate and not to build. I talked a bit about ALM, and it's actually the following step after environment planning. You have now a clear list of environments that you will need. So the next step is to define how you're going to move the different artifacts, the code, the data, the configuration across the environments and make it as efficient as possible so that you don't need anyone doing many manual actions and potential errors. So do watch the ALM Tech Talk after this one. It's a very good follow-up. As usual, we're providing a recap checklist so that you can assess where you are for environments planning. Feel free to use that and adjust as you're getting more experience on your implementations. And finally, here are some resources if you want to go further in terms of compliance, in terms of service level agreement, about the licensing, and so on and so forth. The PowerPoint slides will be downloadable from Infopedia in the page where you're registering. And this is the end of this presentation, so thanks a lot for your attention. And now we're going to cover the questions, if there are any.
Yes, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, great. Christopher, first of all, I think we have to clarify something because we get several questions that this Tech Talk is covering more the online and not the local business of Dynamics 365 for operations. Can you say something about it? Because the environment planning is really about our cloud solution. And
Absolutely, yes.
Not about the on-premise version we have.
Absolutely. So this Tech Talk, and it's good to know, I should have mentioned it, but it's refocused on the cloud solution and not local business data.
So, and then there's also a question if you can elaborate a little bit more why production cannot be used as an environment pre-go live. Somebody is asking again if you have some more explanation than you already delivered in this session.
Is there a specific scenario, like an activity that would be listed for that?
Not in the question.
Because if you take, for example, I have the case with one of my customers, they want to do performance testing in production. So the prerequisite is that production is released when UAT is done, meaning that the solution is final, signed off. Yes. If they were indeed doing performance testing in production, it would be already too late if they detect a performance issue, first, production doesn't have the tools to do any investigation. So they come back to the situation where, okay, we have an issue, but we cannot investigate. So they would need another environment already. So the second aspect is the timing. So first, it would be too late. You would need extra time after UAT. If you were indeed going to plan on using production as a non-production environment, the activities would happen really, really too late. It's difficult to, maybe Davey, you can ask if they have specific activities in mind, so that we can
I think we provide the context, so we can take it offline. Thank you. Okay. I think the other general questions were where can we get the slide deck, but I think we mentioned it, and also
they will be on Infopedia. Indeed.
And also the sample Excel will be on Infopedia. The samples that you use, exactly.
Yes.
Then why do we still recommend a tier 1 sometimes as a golden config, while a tier 2 is easier, for example, in terms of moving the database for initial go live into a prod, while with a tier 1 you still have to use this backpack procedure to get it on a tier 2 plus environment. So why do we still recommend? I would not say we recommend, but why do we give the option tier 1 or tier 2 for a golden config?
I think this is a very good question.
So one thing I already mentioned, sorry to interrupt, but I mentioned already the answer about the pricing, correct? It could be a matter of the price, which is cheaper to get an additional tier 1.
Exactly.
Are there any other advantages of going for a tier 1?
I think it's what you mentioned. Well, the key driver here is if you're taking a tier 2, it's true, and you will leverage the database refresh, so we'll have this part of automation that will help you being more efficient. Tier 1, it's usually when you want to maximize or minimize the costs. And in this case, maybe configuration will be, golden config will be turned on just 4 hours during the day for maybe just the whole week. So they will not pay for the extra days where it's turned off, sorry. So the cost is usually the driving factor.
Then there were also several questions related to retail, because if you think about choosing the right data center, if you have just a few production plants or user locations where users are effectively getting into working with Dynamics 365 operations, but if you have retail shops spread over, for example, the whole US across 3 different regions, then everything becomes more challenging to use the right data center. So we had several questions related to this. And I also said if there's a specific case that you have, then really reach out to us or to the solution architecture team if you're really stuck with this about choosing the right topology, I think, where it starts with, and then choosing the right data center from the beginning.
And the thing is that for retail and for those stores rollout, it's a bit like when you were on premises, but you didn't have that many choices for your data center. So one key exercise that still apply when you're doing and preparing your rollout is to do an assessment of the network in your store. So the local equipment and also the connectivity from the POS device to the different data centers you can consider in Azure. So for example, if you have a shop in Denver, it is good as a preparation step to go there or connect remotely, open azurespeed.com and see what are the results and keep track of maybe the top 3. And you should do the assessment for all the stores where you're going to do the rollout to see if there's any additional action you can take. It could be, for example, improving the line, so working with the ASP, or defining if you're willing to accept the slow response, basically, and then take actions out of that, doing tests and POC potentially. So.
And then the last remark we got from a colleague, but I also got several questions related to it, that the admin lockdown for Tier 2+ environments is not effective today, right? It's planned to come, and
Nope,
it's also, I
it's
think,
not
linked to it's not effective. And when it comes, then we should also have good solutions or alternatives for the current task you're doing by logging on or RDP onto the box. So that's, we don't have all the details yet, but for sure we need to have, and I think, Christopher, you mentioned that on the slide, right? That
Yes.
some of the examples, there could be other tasks that you're doing at the moment by going on the RDP connection. So we should have alternatives for this. We should have them available through LCS before we do an effective lockdown.
Exactly. Other questions or remarks?
Many. Compared to yesterday's session, we have many. I think most of them are answered, or we will come back to in private. I don't know if we still have time. There's still a question, or maybe more a remark for implementation partners, that they have no way to have a Tier 2+ environment for performance testing of their own solution. I think this is a remark we get as well several times, not during this session. I mean, as an implementation partner or ISV, that you have no way to have a Tier 2+ environment in your own subscription, for example, for performance testing.
Okay. Yes, for this one, we should take it offline because it relates to licensing also.
Yeah, but it's not a new question. We got it many times. I think for the rest, we don't have any pending questions at this moment. So I think we can close Q&A for this session.
Okay. So the key message is really for you to understand the concepts around the environments for Dynamics 365 Finance and Operations, and think about the environment planning early in the project. So hopefully this tech talk will help you to do that. And thanks again for your attention here. Feel free to ask any additional question or provide your feedback. It's always good for us to enrich the content and process the real needs you have on the field. So with that, back to you, Janice. Thanks.
All right. Thank you, Christopher. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to take a moment and bring your attention to a link that I just posted in the messages panel. That's a link to a short survey for this web conference. We ask that you please take a moment before logging out to access it. We hope that you found today's information helpful, and if you enjoyed today's web conference, have feedback on how we can provide you with a better event, or you'd like to submit topics for future web conferences, this is your chance to let us know. The survey scores are on a scale from 1 to 5, with 5 being the highest score possible. And that is going to conclude today's web conference. Attendees can access the web conference recording by the same registration link used to attend today's live broadcast. I'd like to extend a big thank you to our presenters, Christopher and Davey, and thank you, audience, for logging in and joining us today.